The Human Torch was denied a bankroll. Hey everybody, welcome to Love More. My name's Blake. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my near-death experience. I'm going to encompass the whole story. If you're interested or don't know what that is, just stick around and you'll find out. So in my last video, I got a reply from a viewer named Hillary, and she was asking me if I could share my near-death experience in full detail. So this one's for you, Hillary. I mentioned a little bit of this story in my last video when I was covering my religious and spiritual growth in my life so far. But in this video, I'm going to strictly just focus on my near-death experience and share it with everyone. I'll try to cover this as quickly as possible because this can go on for, I can talk about this forever. So it was 2013, my senior year in college had just started. I was going through a rough period. I was hurt over a girl. Because of this, I went out. I was a longboarder at the time. I went out skating by myself, which was a no-no. During the skate, I was going down this big hill. I hit a rock. I wiped out. Got bad injuries. I hit my head pretty hard. I was wearing a helmet. I scuffed up the side of my body. Kind of blacked out for a minute when I hit initially. Got my skateboard, and then actually ended up just skating home with my injuries. I was just like,
I don't care.
So I get home, I shower off, I clean my wounds, and then I go over to my buddy's house just to kind of hang out. And I didn't really think anything was really wrong with me, but I had suffered a severe concussion. So I get over to my friend's house, we hang out for a little bit, we were just kind of hanging out, and then all of a sudden I started feeling really strange, and I ended up just blacking out and passing out. So at this moment when I pass out, the story splits off into two angles, and I'm going to talk about what happened here on Earth before I get into what I experienced. So basically, I passed out at my friend's house. We were outside on his patio. They carried me into the couch. This is super gross. I'm sorry, but I am going to share all the details of the story just because I feel like it kind of will show how serious this event actually was. I make light of it now because I've made peace with it, but it was super intense, kind of scary. I stopped breathing. I was turning blue. My lips were turning blue. My face was turning blue, and I was vomiting a lot. My poor friends. Oh God. While that was going on, I was kind of coming in and out of consciousness. But the gaps between me coming in and out were getting longer and longer, and I was turning blue, wasn't breathing, all this stuff. Anyway, my friends call the ambulance, the paramedics show up, they check me out, they put me on the stretcher, they put me in the ambulance, they take me to the hospital. At the hospital, they do all the kinds of, I'm not a technician, I'm pretty sure it's CAT scan when they scan your head, but they put me in a CAT scan. They chalk it up to, well, you had a really bad concussion, and they sent me home, and I had no side effects. I didn't have a headache, I didn't have any kind of, I had the scuffs on my body, my physical body, but as far as the concussion goes, nothing, no headaches, no vomiting after I left the hospital, no side effects. It was really strange. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong. They just released me, and I was fine after this, physically. So that's one part of the story. So when I passed out, the other part of the story, I was immediately thrusted into this black void. And I say I was thrusted because it was my consciousness. While I share this story with you, I'm going to let you know that it's super common in near-death experiences to not have the right words. We use earthly words here on Earth. A lot of times it doesn't equate. Things you experience you can't express them in earthly words. And I know that is so weird, such a weird concept to think about, but it's almost like this didn't happen to me, but it's almost like if you saw a color you had never seen in your, like, if you saw a color that didn't exist in reality and you tried to explain it to your friends. Like, you've seen it, you feel it, but you almost have no words to describe it. That's how most near-death experiences are. So I was thrusted into this black void. Obviously I didn't have a body. It was just my consciousness. Like, I was still Blake, 100%. I could think just like I'm thinking now, talking into this camera, but it was just blackness forever. I was fully aware of what was happening. I was like, oh my God, this is death. I'm dying. This is like the next step. Totally, like, fully aware as you are watching this video. I was like, this is death. It was intense. I became worried. Not so much to continue into whatever this was that I stumbled upon, but I was more worried for like everything I was gonna leave behind. Like, if I died, I was in my early 20s. My friends and family were gonna be gone. I would never have a career, never get married, never have kids. All that stuff was in my head. I was like, oh my God, this is never gonna happen. So I became super tense and kind of worried. And honestly, the experience was kind of unpleasant. I can't explain how long this went on because time wasn't really, it's almost like time didn't exist. And I wish I could explain that more, but I can't. So I was in this black void for an unknown amount of time, thinking about my death that was happening. And then all of a sudden, I was like downloaded with this information. I don't know how to explain that, but it was almost like there was a presence there with me. The presence gave me knowledge. There was no talking. It was all telepathically. I was downloaded with the knowledge that, yes, this is death. And yes, I can choose to die now, like die on Earth. I don't think we actually ever like die, like cease to exist. I think we just change. But I could choose to die on Earth and like continue into this death on the other side, or I could go back. This like being, this presence downloaded me with this knowledge, and I knew I had this choice, just like I know my name is Blake and you know that you're awake watching this video. It was common sense. So immediately I was still in a fluster about my own death and all this stuff, and I immediately said that I didn't want to die. Well, and when I say I said it, I was thinking it. So the exact moment I had the thought that I don't want to die, I want to go back, instantaneously I woke up. Like, I was in the black void with the presence, instantly was downloaded with the knowledge that I could die, instantly answered in my head that I don't want to die, and then I was opening my eyes. And that's it. But that's all that happened to me. That was it. And after this happened, it was kind of bad for a while. I was atheist at the time when this happened, and I was trying to explain this away as a hallucination for a long time. It gave me a lot of anxiety about death. After all my research into near-death experiences, people that typically have them are the opposite. They usually don't fear death. But I had what's considered a NDE, which is a distressing near-death experience. They are insanely rare. Out of all the population that has near-death experiences, the documented cases, NDEs make up about 1% of all reported cases. So after this, I did develop a fear of death. I was scared to leave people behind after that. It was a little traumatic. It ultimately became an experience that I wouldn't want to live without. It changed my life greatly. And sometimes learning is hard, but there was a lesson in it, and I grabbed it. At the time, I didn't know these were called near-death experiences. I had no idea what that is. The term I'm referring to is when someone is pronounced clinically dead and they're revived, and when they come back, they bring an experience back with them. I know a lot of times in pop culture, near-death experience is like,
I was mountain biking on that edge of the mountain. I almost fell off, but I didn't. And I had a near-death experience because I was near death. And
that's where the term is a little muddled, because The near-death experience I'm referring to is not near death at all. It was death. Like, I died. The paramedics told me I probably had sudden cardiac arrest due to my severe concussion. About a year after my experience, I happened to stumble upon a book called Proof of Heaven. It's by Edmund Alexander. It's a world-renowned neurosurgeon who was an atheist at the time, got a super rare form of meningitis, was clinically dead, had this amazing transformation in the afterlife, or whatever you want to call it. He's actually revived, comes back into his body, makes a full recovery, and writes this book. If you haven't read it, if you are interested in near-death experiences, I would strongly suggest this book. It was the first one I read among dozens, and it's still one of my favorites. After I read that book, I noticed all the similarities with Edmund Alexander's and my experience, and then it's just like the doors flew open. I became so interested in this topic, so I started reading everything I could about near-death experiences. I wouldn't consider near-death experiences like a church or a religion or like a way in spirituality, but reading near-death experiences have greatly shaped my spirituality immensely. That's my experience. If you have ever experienced anything like this, I would love to talk to you in the comments. Scroll up, get down there, tell me what happened, or what is also welcomed is if you know anyone that has had an experience like this. So if you know anyone like that, a grandparent, a parent, a friend, and you feel comfortable sharing it, please share. Let's have a discussion. I hope everyone's having a great week. I hope that everyone is striving to do what they want to do. Whatever it is you want to do, chase it. And don't give up. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.